So the way that your top case looks is going to differ among the MacBook Pro models, but it's going to be basically the same sort of repair. So there's a little tab here on the plastic that kind of overlaps. It's a little hard to see it on this eyesight, but the tab here overlaps the other side. So that's the side that I'm going to go ahead and start with here. Now, some people look at this and they say there's no way that you can peel this off nicely and neatly. And, you know, we'll see how I do. Sometimes you might rip and tear a little bit, but if you're ginger with it, you can normally get it off in one piece. If it does rip or tear a little bit, that's not a big deal. What this is, it kind of has double duty. It acts as an insulator, and also it's kind of nice, and I don't know if this is intentional, but it does catch liquid that spills on the keyboard occasionally, preventing it from going to the logic board or other components. So now that I have this one end flipped backwards, I lay my black stick on it just to hold it down, and I'll notice there are 3 screws here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the screws that are holding the keyboard to the top case. On this model, there are also little pieces of tape that cover up 2 remaining screws. And that's one of the things that you're going to find is different on different models of the MacBook Pro. The earlier models won't have that at all, whereas a lot of the later models will. So I need to peel those little dots up as well. I'm not going to throw them out, I'm just going to save them over on the corner here so that I have them. And I'm going to remove the 2 screws there. Also, while I'm over and I have this side exposed, let's see if I can get you a shot of this. There are little clips that are they help support the keyboard to the top case. So it's actually just little pieces of metal that are bent at a 90-degree angle to hold it in there. So the trick is to unbend those, and it's actually not much of a trick. You just need to be gentle with it with a black stick, and you want to bend them straight. So I'm taking them from 90 degrees nice and straight, and that'll help the keyboard just slip out nicely. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So I want to start peeling back here.
Sorry to bring this one back. Did you say that you had successfully charged to AR or just left the balance do? Oh.
Now these nylon probe tools are great, and I have in my videos had a few people ask where you can get them. I believe MCM Electronics is a great source for that. MCMelectronics.com is where I get a lot of my tools. I have in the past, when I've been trying to wing it, gotten away with using a plastic dinner knife as well. Not quite as flexible, but it does the job. So I have that tilted back, and we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to take out. Important to not forget about these little guys that are hidden all the way on the side. And then again on this side I do have one more screw hidden under this piece of shielding, and I'm going to go ahead and just take the shielding up. And there's our last screw. Also on this side there are more of those bent pieces of metal, so I've got 3 of them here. On the very first version of the MacBook Pro, as with the PowerBooks, it only has 4 of the metal pieces. The 2 side pieces are not there. In lieu of that, there are longer pieces of metal that need to clip in on the sides. You don't really need to know about that for removing the keyboard, but when you put the keyboard back on, that's going to be important. So I'll tell you why that'll be important when we get there. Now there are 2 flex cables I need to release in order to take the keyboard out. The little flex cable here powers the backlight on the keyboard. That's a good thing to know in case you get the whole thing back together and the backlight doesn't work on the keyboard. Well, you probably forgot to plug that in. Now I need to remove the flex cable down here. In order to do that, I just need to gently peel up the piece of plastic that protects the underside of the trackpad. And now I bend the this black release clip forward, which is the same thing I did over here, but I kind of went a little quickly over that. So you bend the black piece forward and then grab the flex cable and release it. It is actually stuck to the top case with a piece of tape there, so you want to use a little bit of force. If this is a keyboard you want to reuse, you obviously don't want to use a lot of force. And now as I pick up the top case, this keyboard just fell right out because it was completely released. If there was liquid damage, it probably wouldn't fall right out. You might even need to use a little bit of force to scrape it out. What I've seen, here's the bottom of the keyboard. And you'll notice on the bottom of this keyboard, there is this layer, which is basically just a white piece of plastic. The white piece of plastic, when the liquid comes into the keyboard, tends to not really liquefy, but it definitely absorbs a lot of whatever is spilled on it. So it does tend to stick to the metal or stick to the back of the keyboard. So this is the part that if you need to do some scraping, you're going to be scraping off if there's liquid on there. Now there is no liquid damage on this, so we can pretend that this is a brand new keyboard. I'm just going to put it right back on this computer. What I wanted to talk to you about is if this was a first generation MacBook Pro, or if this was a 15-inch or 17-inch PowerBook, what it would have on the side, instead of being nice and flat on the side here, there would be two clips, and they would be on each side. So two clips there and two clips here. Reseating the keyboard, it's very important to get those clips clipped in the correct place. So what I'm going to do here, and I'm not going to have that challenge, but just keep that in mind if you do, I want to slip the flex cable into the top case again. There are clips on the very bottom of the keyboard, and they meet with the holes that are the same size on the bottom of the top case. So I first seat it forward. I'll give you a little bit of a better view here. I first seat it forward so that it's nice and flush on the bottom, and all those clips are in place. Now if this were a first gen MacBook Pro or a 15 or 17-inch PowerBook, the next step would be to flex the keyboard sideways and slide the clips in place on that side, and then flex it sideways and slide the clips in place on the left side. So that's the step to remember if you're working with one of those models. With this model it's a lot easier. You just need to seat the keyboard down, and you'll see that the metal clips go into the back the way that they should. And the metal clips is also where I'm going to start. So I'm just going to reseat this a little bit. You want to make sure it's nice and flat. You don't want any bubbling or warps. And then I'm just going to hold it for a moment and bend those metal clips back to their 90-degree angle. I know it's hard to see this over eyesight, but once you start doing this in person, you should see pretty clearly where those pieces of metal are. And if you forgot to bend them out of their 90-degree angle when you were taking the keyboard off, it's going to cause you a bit of a headache when you put the keyboard back on. So I've got all my clips bent back into place. And now I'm going to start with the screws. So the other thing to keep in mind, and again with this model it's a little easier because it just slides right in, but if you didn't get the side clips in place on the previous models, then you'll notice that the screw holes don't line up correctly. So that's a nice key that you're not done seating the keyboard. You've got to go back and make sure those clips are seated, because you want the screw holes to be pretty centered in the screw holes in the top case. So I'm going to go ahead and start here just putting the screws back. Well, I have this side exposed.